Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to those of you joining me from around the world. I'm Craig Guyman from Binalyze, and today I'm sharing with you the third video in a series of videos on how to use Binalyze AIR. Today we'll be using the console to create an acquisition profile and to use existing acquisition profiles. We're on the dashboard now, but before I jump into the dashboard, I want to share with you our knowledge base article, kb.binalyze.com. From here, you can get information on all the important aspects of using the console, including how to set up and use the features within the console, of which the acquisition is chief among them. You have the ability to look at all the different types of acquisitions that we can perform in Binalyze, which we'll be going over today. All right, now that we've showed you the knowledge base article, let's jump in and build where we left off last when we were doing deployments to Windows and Mac agents. In order to create a new acquisition profile, go to the endpoint section, and once you're in that section, you can go ahead and choose to select an existing endpoint, or you can go over to the acquisition session, and from here you can create a new profile. From here you can give it a name. We'll just call this test. And I want to point out that by default, none of the artifacts and evidence items within these lists for Windows, for Linux, Mac, or eDiscovery will be selected. You can go in and select them as you choose, or you can choose to create this when you're creating a collection from an endpoint if you want. I won't go over all of the individual evidence items in this list. However, I will mention that if you are doing a compromise type of investigation, you may want to start with our compromise assessment acquisition profile that's already built in the system. I would caution against choosing too many options at first when you're doing your first collections, so as to reduce the amount of time that it takes to do your first collections and get to the ultimate report that you're after when you're doing your first investigations with Binalyze. It is tempting to select everything, but as you can see, if you select everything, you'll be collecting memory, you'll be collecting the USN journal, you'll be collecting some very large items that might take quite a long time to collect, and that might not necessarily be what you're after when you're doing your first. So select some of the registry hives as necessary, and certainly the event records or event logs, WMI, and process execution where required. If we go out of this window, I can share with you some of the existing profiles that are already in this program by default. One of those is the compromise assessment, and I think it's worth going over that in this particular session and video, because it will explain to you some of the more important items that we'll collect during this type of investigation. This will include all of the relevant system files that you might be after, and you might also be after volume information at a high level, as well as all the major browsers. We will collect the MFT, but not as a mirror and not the USN journal in this particular acquisition profile, as well as your shell bags all the way through to your typed URLs. You'll also notice that we'll collect some of the process execution in here, prefetch and SRUM and Amcache among the chief of those. You also have the ability to come in and select a Linux profile acquisition evidence items if you wish. And if you do want to do that, you can go ahead and just edit this and add those to this list if you'd like. Or I would suggest creating an entirely new acquisition profile specifically for compromise assessment on a Linux system. To do that, you would follow the process I showed you before by clicking on New Profile. Give it a name. You might want to append that with, if we say test, for example, you might want to call it Linux in order to keep straight how that is being used. You could tie this to a specific organization within your company if you wanted to. However, in most cases, it's appropriate to choose all organizations. And then from here, you can start not only choosing the evidence lists, but the artifact lists. You can also choose from a list of custom content profiles where you're able to add a path or a wildcard to a series of different files. This is applicable if you're trying to collect, for example, a user's profile or all users' documents from a specific profile, from all profiles in this particular case. It's also worth noting that you can also collect a series of different eDiscovery type collections that include a block for archives, cryptography, databases, disk images in my personal favorite, email, which would be a very common e-discovery type methodology in using this program. We do cover all of the major email profiles. We also cover fonts, internet applications, which is quite comprehensive, as well as Mac OS system files and miscellaneous documents that don't fit into any other category, as well as P2P documents, depending on what kind of investigation you're doing, and a variety of different types of pictures, in this case 150 different types, as well as text and other program executable files that you might be interested in getting, and other text and word processing files as well. This concludes this session for today. We will be performing another video on other topics in the next coming days. If this was of help to you and you found this valuable, I'd love to hear from you. If you have other questions that I can help answer for you, please feel free to reach out to me at craig.guyman@binalyze.com. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.